안녕하세요. 제 이름은 댄 리입니다. 한글로 이명섭. I'm running for Congress in the Virginia's 11th Congressional District. The special primary election is coming up on Saturday, June 28th. There will be 17 polling stations across the district. You can find more information at cd11votes.com. Again, cd11votes.com. You can learn more about myself and my campaign at danleeforvirginia.com. Thank you very much. I was born and raised in Fairfax County. My parents were immigrants from South Korea, and they landed here in the 1970s, and I was born and raised in Northern Virginia. My professional background has been in public service most of my career over the last 20 years. I've worked at the White House, I worked for a governor, and I was at the World Bank for a number of years. More recently, I've been a healthcare entrepreneur. I started a couple companies in healthcare using technology to provide people better access to affordable and high-quality healthcare. And I would say the most proud title that I have is that I'm also a caregiver for my mother, who is elderly but also has Parkinson's disease. So being a caregiver for her has shaped my worldview and helped me, really kind of inspired me to be in this race, to help people like her, but also all of Northern Virginia. My parents were immigrants from South Korea. They immigrated separately from Korea to the US, and they met in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, through a mutual pastor. And the pastor got them together and they ultimately got married. They moved to this area in the mid-70s, and my sister and I were born in Fairfax County, and we were raised in Chantilly, Virginia. My dad was a small business owner, and my mom was a nurse. For ironically most of her career, even though she was a nurse providing healthcare for others, she didn't have access to healthcare of her own because she didn't have health insurance. It was just too expensive for her family. So ironically, being a healthcare provider and not having access to healthcare in this own country, that is not just a moral failing. That is also an economic failing to ensure that all Americans have access to basic healthcare. Because access to healthcare is one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is making sure that you have access to affordable healthcare. And right now we have a system that is clearly incentivized to only provide profits over actual healthcare. That needs to change, and that starts by getting rid of the special interests in Congress so they do not have influence over these decisions. And just a bit of history, the Affordable Care Act, when it was passed 15 years ago in 2010, it was originally supposed to have a public option, right? An option for American people to purchase a government-sponsored health care. Now, that was pushed out because of special interests, but now we are actually in a moment where that is actually now very much possible, and I want to make sure that is a reality very soon. Never held elected office before. I am an outsider candidate in this race, and for me, I see that as a strength, because I believe that the chaos of the Trump administration and his Trump agenda today is a direct result of the failures of our Democratic leaders in Washington and across the country to enable this to happen. And so for me, not being part of that elected political class is a strength. I have experience in federal government and state government, as well as international development. So I want to bring those efforts to solutions in DC. When I left the World Bank, I was there at the World Bank for a few years, about 4 years. I left during COVID because there was an opportunity to start a company based on the experience caring for my own mom. I mentioned that she has Parkinson's disease, and I noticed that when we were getting her clinical care, seeing her doctor, getting her medications, getting her physical therapy, those things are, the pathways for those things are pretty clear cut. What was less clear is that after you leave the clinic, you go back home, things that you need around caregiving or transportation or meals, right, which are just as important, if not more, to the health and well-being of one individual. Getting the access to those services is very difficult because those services are very fragmented. So we found an opportunity to try to connect older adults with those social services in a way that was much more efficient. Given my background, I'm a public servant as well as a healthcare entrepreneur. For me, healthcare is critical. And for our country that pays twice as much per individual on healthcare costs, we spend every year $5 trillion, which is over a fifth of our national GDP, on healthcare. Yet for that kind of cost, we get very bad outcomes, right? And we need to ensure that every American has guaranteed access to health care, which means Medicare for everyone, not just people over 65, but those between 21 and 65. In addition, we have to ensure that people have a livable wage so that they can not only survive, but thrive in our communities and in this country, as well as having affordable access to dependent care. So dependent care for kids and for seniors. And these are things that are not just nice things to have. These are essential to our right to exist and our right to thrive as Americans in this country. Well, I think the Korean-American alliance is one that has been tested for over 50 years. And the fact that the U.S. is a strong ally of South Korea. That partnership, that friendship, hopefully will continue for a long time. And we want to make sure that America provides safety and security, not just in South Korea, but for the whole Asia-Pacific region. And that also means that South Korea can also stand up for its own rights and deliver it for its own interests to its own people. We are powering this election through a completely grassroots effort. My background as a solutions maker, as someone who's actually provided better public services, for example, things like helping the trains run on time, or helping people get their driver's licenses in maybe 45 minutes versus 2 hours at the DMV, or helping them get their unemployment checks on time. These are things that I've worked on directly. And we are using that message to say to the residents of Northern Virginia, to the voters of Northern Virginia, that if you want this kind of change and not just the kind of status quo, we have an option with our campaign. We're reaching out to AAPI voters, we're reaching out to young voters, we're trying to expand the universe of voters in this area as well. Because keeping in mind, when you compare primary elections compared to general elections, they turn out different kinds of voters. Primary elections tend to turn out the most engaged voters, both on the left and the right. But we want to expand that and remind people that this is a critical election. This election, this special election coming up for this congressional seat, is not just an election on a referendum on the Trump administration. This election is a referendum on the Democratic Party and the agenda going forward. So are they going to double down on the status quo, things that just have not worked, and they're going to keep doing the same things over and over? Or are they going to vote for a candidate that does something very different, fundamentally different? I respect Irene. She's an inspiration to me. She's one of the first kind of Korean Americans to hold office in Virginia. And currently she's in the House of Delegates. Of course, Mark Kim was the original Korean American. These are individuals who have charted the path forward for Korean Americans and other AAPI candidates to hold office. And that inspiration should hopefully encourage many others to come into these campaigns and these races. And hopefully I will not be the last. Irene, ironically, as you mentioned, we coincidentally launched our campaigns on the very same day. Complete coincidence. I think she's running a race that can be hopefully inspiring to many Northern Virginians. I hope to run a race that's also inspiring to many Northern Virginians. The choices between the two of us, other than our ethnic heritage, being Korean Americans, she has a record of service in the House of Delegates in Virginia, and I have a record of service in my own public sector, having worked at the White House, having worked for a governor, having delivered real public services to improve people's lives. And I hope to bring that message to voters in this election.